Oil rigs. Don't you just hate them? I mean, think about it, right? You're stuck on the maritime equivalent of a rusting, floating skyscraper out in the middle of nowhere, usually getting lashed by gale force winds, surrounded by machinery that could just as easily blow up and kill everyone on board, and also that you can drill into the earth and extract some liquefied, fossilized dinosaur poop, so that some rich celebrity can fly a private jet to Paris and get herself some delicious crepes. A crappy work environment they might be, but they make for an interesting backdrop for a psychological horror story, and presumably the people at the Chinese room felt the same way, which is why we ended up with Still Wakes the Deep, a kind of survival horror game about a man trapped on an oil rig that's drilled into something it really shouldn't have, and unleashed a force that threatens to destroy not just the rig, but the entire world. You play as Kaz, an electrician who's got himself into a spot of bother back on the mainland and decided to take a job on an oil rig so he can lay low for a while and avoid the law. Unfortunately, these things have a habit of catching up with you. Believe me, I can tell you all about that. And when his boss finds out that the police are looking for him, it's not long before he's lost his job.
You're fired. You hear me? Fired.
Unfortunately, before he can board the chopper back to the mainland, the rig is rocked by a sudden explosion and loss of power that cripples the entire facility. It seems like they've drilled into something deep below the surface that should have remained undisturbed. But instead of some gas explosion or an oil leak, the rig instead seems to have been infected by something almost alien and organic. Something that's starting to have a drastic effect on the crew members who get exposed to it. Your mission from this point onward is going to be pretty familiar to anyone who's played a few survival horror games in their time. Do your best to stabilise the platform as best you can, round up any survivors and get the hell out of there before the whole place blows up. Oh yeah, and do your best to avoid your former crewmates who are now, well, looking a bit worse for wear. That is absolutely disgusting. I mean, you still would though, wouldn't you? The difference though between Still Wakes the Deep and something like, say, Resident Evil or Silent Hill is that with those games you had weapons and resources that you could use to defend yourself. Here, you've really got nothing. Your only option is to run away and hope for the best. And I feel like this brings me to one of the big downsides of this game, so I might as well get into my criticisms right off the bat. Gameplay in Still Wakes the Deep is linear, and I mean extremely linear, like you've literally got one path to success that you have to follow, and if you deviate from it in any way, then you're going to find yourself replaying from the last checkpoint pretty damn quickly. And in case you're in any doubt about which direction you should be heading, they've even got the dreaded yellow paint pointing the way for you.
Oh man! Oh god! Oh man!
I mean, contextually, it at least makes a bit more sense than something like Resident Evil 4. You're on an oil rig after all, and they quite often use yellow paint to signify things that are important. But still, it just adds to the overall feeling that you're being railroaded through a gameplay experience rather than being allowed to discover it at your own pace. I mean, not that it matters that much anyway, because the checkpoint system is so forgiving that you're never going to lose more than a minute or two of gameplay anyway. But the end result is the same. It's a game that doesn't really give you much flexibility in how you approach various situations. You always feel like you're being forced down one particular path, and there's no options for creativity or experimentation. And it feels like a real wasted opportunity because the idea of having an entire oil rig to explore and backtrack through is actually quite appealing. Instead, the gameplay is broken up into a series of small, linear, self-contained areas that you have to get through in a certain way, and then move on to the next area for the next bit of story progression. It's much the same with enemy encounters. Since you don't have any weapons, you can't fight them, and so basically you just have to hide in a certain area, throw an object to distract them, and then wait for their slightly retarded AI to take them off in another direction, so that you can then make a run for it. Literally every single one of them is the same deal, and, well, it gets a bit tedious after a while. Now, I've been banging on about the gameplay so much because in most other respects, Still Wake the Deep is actually a very intriguing and well put together story experience. The central mystery of what exactly you've unearthed here is one that keeps driving you throughout the entire game. It's never fully explained, and to be honest, I don't really need it to be. Uninspiring enemy encounters aside, the actual design of the monsters is superb. Just a horrifying conglomeration of flesh and tentacles that you can barely even make sense of. An obscene parody of humanity lurching from room to room, but still with some semblance of their former personalities showing through at times. You're not really sure whether to fear them or pity them. From a graphical standpoint, the oil rig looks absolutely fantastic. The early gameplay sections actually caused me to just stop for a while and look around. The environments are so detailed and interesting and atmospheric, you just want to explore and get a feel for the place. The character work is superb, there's an interesting cast of people that you have to interact with, and Cass himself is a compelling and sympathetic protagonist. He's smart and resourceful, but he's not exactly a hero, and for the most part he just wants to get the hell out of there and get back to his wife. But his loyalty to his friends and crewmates is what drives him to keep risking his life over and over to help people. The mostly Scottish voice cast give it their all, and honestly, the dialogue is superb. It's not often you hear genuine Scottish accents on screen like this, and I can tell you from experience, this is absolutely how working class Scottish guys talk to each other.
Shut your gob, you Ned prick! I am sick to bouking of you wee gobshites messing with my operation. That chef might be a mate of yours, but he does not run things around here, I do.
And the game's even able to summon up some surprisingly poignant moments towards the end. Ultimately, Still Wakes the Deep is a game I find myself wanting to praise and yell at in equal measure. As a story, it's a great blend of Lovecraftian horror and a poignant, intimate, personal drama, with a nice atmospheric setting and a central mystery that keeps pushing you forwards. But it's all let down by a simplistic, linear gameplay structure that asks so little from the player that it barely even represents a challenge. And honestly, it almost feels like it would make a better movie than a game. But hey, if you're happy enough to just play through a neat little psychological horror story, well, you could probably do a lot worse than Still Wakes the Deep. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.